Thanks for joining us this afternoon. As Eva said, this is because we're doing it all virtual. Hopefully soon we'll be doing it in person, and we were just saying we'll keep a virtual piece to it because we really enjoyed that. So as you're hearing the program and you've got questions, you can drop them in the chat. We'll keep an eye out for that. Madalena will put some links in the chat so that you can see about Nevada Now and how to join and that sort of information. So we'll be watching for that. We like to start off with introducing our board. So I'm Jerry Burton. I'm the president of Nevada Now, and I think we have everybody with us. Tricia Methner is our executive vice president. Vice President Outreach is Eva Love. She runs our programs and helps me with all the emails. And Madalena Robertson is Vice President Media. She's involved with the website and helps mix our graphics and just all the way around supports me on that. Sue Birch is, she's Nevada Now PAC Treasurer. She's also the chair of our legislative committee and Vice President Legislative Action. And Lenoring Briley is our treasurer, and Michelle Maese is our secretary and helps put together our wonderful programs. So thanks for joining us. And you can also join our legislative committee where it's kind of coming to the last couple of weeks here, but we've been testifying for bills, and we have you can see on the Nevada Now website the bills that we support. Sue's going to give us an update in just a minute on the legislation that we've been working on and where we're at on that and how people can help. So we've been giving opinions and testifying. One of our favorites, and I know she's going to be talking about it, is finally moving forward AB 224, the period poverty bill. We're really excited about. So that's been my adopted bill. I was so excited this morning to see that it's moving through Ways and Means finally. So that's exciting. So Sue, do you want to go ahead and give us an update, and then we can start talking about our topic, our program?
Yeah, absolutely. We're down to crunch time. Yay. I'm sure Assemblywoman's kind of happy about that. It's been a long session and pretty crazy. But as Jerry said, Tuesday is going to be a pretty big day in Assembly Ways and Means with the period equity bill and the lactation rooms and government and courthouses bill, both Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. And then I know there's a Medicaid bill, also a hearing on Tuesday in Senate Health and Human Services at 3:30, and I'll put the info in the chat. And there's also some info on phone banking for AJR1 * to help keep the pressure on. And I've also heard rumors, and maybe the Assemblywoman can confirm, that there's 2 special sessions coming, July and September, maybe, for some more fun stuff. So it's going to be another crazy week, but we've all hung in there, and I'm very proud of all of you for testifying and hanging in there with us. So.
And I'm sure that Mika Voda and the Assemblywoman and we'll be talking about the bills they're working on as well. So we just want to kind of give you just a quick update on what we're working on, and you can find out more information on our website. So, so I thought I would start off to our topic on immigration on a statement that I liked. It was from the executive director of the National Immigration Law Center. Said immigrants are essentially our communities, economy, and our nation. Nearly 3/4 of all immigrants in the U.S. workforce, including more than 5 million who are undocumented, are working in essential roles and helping us get through the COVID-19 pandemic. Whether caring for our most vulnerable, teaching our kids, rebuilding after climate disasters, or keeping us fed, millions of immigrants are putting themselves and their loved ones at risk for all of us. We've applauded these courageous workers for keeping our country running in the midst of a global public health and economic crisis, and that's not enough. We must recognize immigrant essential workers under the law and put them on a pathway to U.S. citizenship as part of our relief and recovery efforts. And then talking about Biden's immigration reform and the trouble with getting 10 Republicans to vote for it, Senator Bob Menendez said, and I want to use this statement from now on. We will never win an argument that we don't have the courage to make. I just love that. That can work for anything, but we will do the righteous thing and make our case for both inclusive and lasting immigration reform. And we've seen in our past poll after poll, the vast majority of Americans are standing with us. So that was sort of on the federal level. We're going to talk about on Nevada, but we're going to be joined first by Javier Rivera Rojas. He's the regional representative from Senator Cortez Masto's office, and we wanted to start kind of with the federal update of the things she's working on. And thanks, Javier, for joining us.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here. As she said, I'm Javier Rivera Rojas. I do immigration casework and Latino outreach for the senator in Southern Nevada. And that's a little bit about me. On my portfolio, I make sure that all the issues that are happening locally are forwarded along to the senator. And that includes immigration casework, which we receives dozens and dozens of cases, whether it be a Daca recipient needing a renewal or a citizenship application that has been delayed. So that's something that we do at the local level here. I'm more than happy to help out on my end. And just a quick update from some of the conversations that I've been having in Washington. The senator is part of the bipartisan group with 15 senators, both Democrats and Republicans. Those conversations are ongoing. And, the main focus is immigration reform. Another piece of it, or legislation specifically, that the senator has co-sponsored is the Us Citizenship Act, which would also give a pathway to citizenship for immigrants. And then the senator has her own bill that she's reintroduced just this past week, the Fairness for Immigrant Families Act. Some of the key provisions in these bills are eliminating the 3 to 10 year bar. That has been a big part of the conversation because that would relieve a lot of current undocumented immigrants from that. It bars them from adjusting, and that the act would help them to adjust. And some of the other co-sponsorships the senator has co-sponsored is the Dream and Promise Act. I know that it's definitely very important for the senator that Dreamers and DACA recipients receive, a pathway to citizenship, as well as TPS recipients. And then she's visited detention centers here in Nevada, specifically that was Pahrump Detention Center, and she has gone to the border to visit. I think that was in 2019. We joined our team to go down there and visit some of the Border Patrol facilities, and also go into Mexico and speak to migrants who were being detained and deported. And that's just a little bit what she's done so far. She has spoken to the Department of Homeland Security nominee, Secretary Mayorkas, during those conversations, during the nomination proceedings. Related to COVID, I know she has been a part of the conversations and push for mixed status families to receive direct payments. That was a big push towards the end of the year to make sure that families did that, because a lot of mixed status families would not receive the direct payments the first time around. And one last thing I'd like to mention is that she has sent multiple letters to the Trump administration, and will continue to send these letters, not specifically, right, because we're in the Biden administration, but, to make sure that the rights of immigrants are being pushed at every level that she can, whether it be a co-sponsorship, a letter, or, working with this bipartisan group.
Thanks, Javier. And one of the things that when you and I spoke, that you were saying that you personally have been working in the community helping. I just didn't know if there was some examples of that I know you personally have been doing.
Examples? I'm sorry?
Oh, just you were saying that you've been working at some of the things that you've done helping in the community.
Yes, of course. So one of the more important things that we've done since the beginning of return is push out the immigrant resource guides, which I can send links, and we can also send to your offices. The Immigrant Resource Guide was put together because we had a lot of immigrants reach out to the office seeking legal assistance and didn't have the financial means to reach out to an attorney, a private attorney. So we sought out the organizations, the nonprofits that provide these services, either pro bono or at low cost. And the Immigrant Resource Guide was one way that we put it all in one book. Also helps folks understand what the process is to become a citizen, to become a resident, and how to avoid notario fraud, which is something that we continue to see regularly in Nevada. And, that's something that I try to help at my levels to make sure that folks are not being taken advantage of when it comes to, either working on their applications or following up with a current application. So that's something that I do on my level. And if there's any either cases or whether it's personal or whether it's from a friend, feel free to reach out.
And I happen to have the link I'm dropping right now because I found it when I was looking up some of the things she's been working on. So if you have any other links, I just put one in that please do share it with us. And we usually send out an email with links and resources after our program. So thank you so much. And if you can stay on for questions, it depends on your schedule, but we'd love to have you stay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I was finding my notes. I have to get back to my notes. I was finding that link. I'm thinking I have that somewhere here. So today we're joined by some great leaders and activists to talk about this issue, immigration policy and reform. We look forward to hearing about the policy. We know with the Biden administration that things are a little better. We hope to hear how that's going and how we're doing with the Nevada legislative session. So we're going to start off with Assemblywoman Selena Torres from District 3, I believe, and her executive assistant, Natalia Jordan, will go second. So we're so happy to have you, Assemblywoman, and we look forward to hearing how things are going with you in the legislative session and the bills you're working on.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you for the invitation to be with you all today. And I just want to, express my appreciation for some of the leaders that I see that are on this call already. Obviously the Honorable Connie Mung, Michelle Maese, who came to my office just the other week and met with me about some important legislation. Natalia, who's a part of my team, Maria, and Jocelyn with me from Familia Vota. There's so many leaders on this call. And so what I want to focus on, though, is like what the state legislature is able to do in response to immigrant issues within our community. And the reality is that the Nevada State Legislature doesn't have the ability to create comprehensive immigration reform. That's not within our realm of power. But what we do have the ability to do is impact the lives of immigrants that live in the state of Nevada. And so we do that through a number of pieces of legislation. One of the pieces of legislation that I'm really excited was just passed out of the Nevada State Senate. So now it's coming back for us to concur, but I think that it'll make its way to the governor's desk without an issue, is dealing with the English Language Learner Bill of Rights to ensure that our Nevada families and students understand their rights when it comes to an English language learner education. We know that one of the deficits that we've had statistically and historically throughout the state has been with our English language learners and their access to a quality education. Nonetheless, I think that part of the barriers to policy is just like the lack of information around English language learner policy and what we should do in response to the issues that we have. So I'm really excited to carry AB 195, which was just passed out of the state Senate, and will make its way back to the Assembly to concur and then to the governor's desk. And that piece of legislation will require that the rights of our English language learners is provided to them annually upon registration and posted online. This will help families understand their rights to a quality education within our country. Unfortunately, the reality is that too many immigrant families fear going into a school building to talk to the officials that work within their school because of their immigration status, and or they maybe don't even understand the education system that we have within this nation because it's so unique globally for us to have such access to a free and public education. So I'm really excited for AB 195 to make its way to the governor's desk because that's one way that our immigrant community has greater access to a quality education. Another piece of legislation that I'm really excited to highlight today is AB 376, which is still in the Assembly Ways and Means Committee, but I'm hoping that it'll get a hearing within the next couple days. We only have like 8 days left of the legislative session, so it has to happen before the 31st. And essentially, AB 376 does a couple things. One, it creates Nevada Working Task Force, which forces and requires the Lieutenant Governor's office to assess and evaluate the role of immigrants in economic development here in the state of Nevada. The second thing it does is require the Attorney General's office to create model policies regarding the interactions between local law enforcement agencies and immigration officials. And the final thing that it does is an appropriation to the UNLV Immigration Clinic of $500,000. We know that the UNLV Immigration Clinic is vital to our immigrant families within our community and ensuring that they have access to representation. Unfortunately, way too many immigrant families go unrepresented when they are facing deportation proceedings, including unaccompanied minors. So you have unaccompanied minors literally representing themselves within this immigration court system that is complex and scary. And I think that this piece of legislation helps allow for Nevada immigrants to have that representation that I think is very much deserved. So I'm excited to see that legislation coming forward. Throughout the next coming weeks, or the next coming days, I should say, because it feels like forever is legislative session, but really it's only about 7 days. We have a number of pieces of legislation that we need to move forward. And I know that the Nevada Hispanic Legislative Caucus is that to continue to work on these issues, not only during the next week, but then throughout the interim to ensure that immigrants have a voice at the table and that we ensure that our communities are heard throughout the legislative process.
Thank you. The other one I was wondering, there's the right to return to work. What bill was that? Were you working on that one, Assemblywoman?
That piece is a legislation. I know it's in the Senate. I think it's just about to come over to the Assembly. And,
okay.
I imagine that Michelle is actually the best person to talk about right to return, or one of my labor brothers and sisters. And I know that it's coming over to our sites shortly. And that piece
hasn't been there yet.
Yeah, and that piece of legislation has to do with getting our workers back into the industry after this pandemic when they have maybe been let go.
Thank you. Yeah, she's giving you the nod. So,
and it's definitely honorable, and I'm happy to get the team more information about it as well too.
We've been working with hearing from SEIU, and I knew it was something that was important. So we're hoping it was making its way over to the other side. So great. Natalia, thank you for joining us. That would go next.
Thank you so much, Jerry. And I think definitely bouncing off of Selena with working in her office. I'm sorry, Assemblywoman Torres. I just want to say that a lot of my job is definitely supporting her and supporting and making sure that a lot of this legislation does pass and doing a lot of the behind the scenes. So sending in amendments, making sure we're having stakeholders together on a call, figuring out as much as possible. And I think that kind of stepping aside from the legislativeness, I definitely like to bring the voice to the table of representing immigrants and representing immigration families. Not a story I share all the time, but definitely something important to note is that I come from 2 immigrant parents. And my mom was actually deported when I was in 4th grade. And so I definitely have the story of understanding what it's like to wake up one day and knowing that there's no longer a parent in the household. And besides that, knowing that even in that situation when it did happen, things are still possible, perseverance is still possible, and you can still push forward. And like Assemblywoman Torres didn't mention, but we are the first Central American office in the state of Nevada. And while it's a pleasure, it's also hurts a lot to know that we're in the year, 2021, and we're still seeing that this is the first office. And so while there's a lot of hurt and there's a lot that we're going through to kind of paving the way, it is real work that is being done. And above all else, I definitely am extremely grateful for the amount of trailblazing that Assemblywoman Torres is doing for the state of Nevada in general. And And so that's something that I like to bring to the table, is knowing that no matter where you come from, things are possible. We are moving in the direction where things should be getting better, hopefully. And so that's kind of what I like to bring to the table when talking about this subject, is just one, that we are the team that's doing it, and we can't do it without everybody's help. We need everybody on board. We need everybody to be on the same team to make those great strides forwards, because I can't imagine how much will be possible 5 years from now, once we have set the way for everybody to see that it is possible. And so, like she was saying, AB 195, my brother was an ELL student, and so he as well went through the entire program. He never learned English until he actually entered school. And so we see that bills like this are truly directive of the community that she is helping, and we get to see how much influence actually happens in the state of Nevada from this legislation. And so if I do have anything to bring to the table, it always is that everything is possible, and above all else, together. So that's what I had to share, but happy to touch on any other subjects as well.
And it probably is a phenomenal asset to the team here in my office and my district, because she understands the needs of my community, having grown up in my district and in my community. She recognizes how diverse it is, how important it is that we have our voices at the table. And, obviously, like, I represent a community that has a large amount of Spanish speakers, and I think that it's important that, we have diverse voices that understand the issues and the passion that oftentimes my constituents are bringing to the table when they're reaching out to us and asking for assistance. And so, I think as legislative bodies change, and I think a lot of it as a result of term limits, because of term limits, we're able to have the first female majority legislature that the Honorable Connie Monk was a part of. Because of term limits, we're seeing a more diverse legislative body here in the state of Nevada. And because of term limits, we're also seeing a more diverse staff. And I think it's phenomenal. Natalia, I think, might be the only Central American staffer that we have in the Nevada State Legislature at all. And it's exciting for me to continue to collaborate and embrace and celebrate the community that we do have. But the reality is that there should be far more representation in the legislative body and in politics in general. And so this is only the start, and I encourage us to continue to uplift and empower similar candidates, because we deserve a voice at the table.
Thank you. We so agree. And one of the things I was going to say, Natalia, when you're not executive assistant, I know you're a community organizer, and if you could let us know ways that people can get involved and help, we'd like to have some actions we can take, or, if you have any links to something that you could share. But as a community organizer, what have you been involved with when you're not executive assistant to an assemblywoman?
No, you're absolutely right. The work never stops. As you can see, my Sunday afternoon is with all these lovely people, because it really is true. The work doesn't stop. The session is 120 days every other year. So all the rest of the work has to be done on the side. And actually, again, bouncing off of Assemblywoman Torres, we did have our program during the COVID-19, delivering food meals, and Mi Familia Vota was actually a huge part of that as well. My family, I still have a lot of undocumented family who, unfortunately, because COVID happened, the reality is, they didn't get a stimulus check. They weren't able to get benefits. They weren't able to get direct help. And above all else, there's no translated material for them to, know about when to get a vaccine, where to go. And during the entire pandemic, I had my sister reaching out to me saying, hey, where are you going? Where can I go? Where can I sign up my kids? Hey, my kids don't have Wi-Fi to do at-home school. What can I do about that, right? And so a lot of those things really play into, at the moment, what the community actually needs, and making sure that that material's translated in Spanish, making sure that it's reaching out. And that's a lot of what I focused on. Before this, I was an organizer in the area. And while I was organizing for Cory Booker as a presidential candidate, my work again was just really like battling disinformation, making sure that materials are translated. The very bare minimum isn't even touched on in these communities. And that's like where we're starting. We're not even at the point of like, let's do real work. It's like, can we at least reach out to these houses? Can we at least, make sure that we have translated lit, translated resources? And while we see the very few resources that we do have during the COVID-19 session, the immigrant community sees none of them unless they've been reached out to directly, right? And with amazing organizers, but a few of them in the entire city, there's only so much that 10 people can do for the entire immigrant base in the state of Nevada. And that's really where it comes into calling for coalitions, calling for battling that disinformation, making sure they know where to get vaccines, making sure they know where to go to, get food in the case that they do have COVID and aren't able to step into a building. And so a lot of the work right now is just pushing that out. As we kind of see times go, we see what is the direct need of the community. And at that time, like, if anyone here on this call can do something, it really is like spread the information as much as possible. While you may think like a Facebook post is just like, oh, it's just going to be a status, there are people who may never come forward and may never reach out to you and say like, thank you for posting. But absolutely everyone is looking for resources, is looking for somewhere to go, is looking for where they can get the help. And I know that maybe Maria and Jocelyn can touch a little bit more on it, since they definitely work within. But as an organizer, and as everyone in the call should definitely be up to date, is really just making sure that information gets out there, and if possible, making sure it's translated in whatever language they can also contribute to. It really is a battle of disinformation with the community. So that's kind of where we're at, but we're working on it, and it definitely is a together project.
Well, thank you. And that does lead us into our next speakers, who are very involved with the community. And we've worked in coalition with them on a few different projects and programs. And we're really excited to have Mi Familia Vota with us. I don't know, Maria, Jocelyn, who wants to go first? We love working with you and want to hear what you're doing in the community. I know you were working on food banks at the beginning of the pandemic, and helping people know about the vaccines, and we want to be able to help in any way we can to work in coalition with you. So I didn't know which of you wanted to go first, but we're so glad you're here.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So as y'all may know, like Mi Familia Vota is a national organization that works specifically with Latino and immigrant communities, as well as those who are allies. Like Natalia and like Jerry mentioned, a lot of our work during the COVID-19 pandemic has definitely been making sure that the misinformation isn't there, making sure that people are receiving the correct information, and like Natalia was saying, in the language that they speak. We were part of the COVID-19 patient support program, which provided weekly groceries to those that were affected by the pandemic. We didn't ask for legal status. We didn't ask for any more information rather than, did you test positive, and how many people are in your household? How else can we help you, and all that good stuff. We were also part of the Esperanza Fund, which provided a one-time $300 check to families. And I mean, this provided a lot of help. Like undocumented immigrants cannot receive the stimulus check, and I am undocumented. I do have Daca, so this has definitely impacted me and my community very, very directly. A lot of my family members were also impacted. Having no healthcare was also like a big part of it, making sure that we were pushing folks to health clinics that were being supportive, that, had a good front for the community, in which our community members did not feel like they were going to get ICE or police threatened to them. A lot of it also came from evictions. A lot of people were being evicted, and rent prices were also going up, and they were actually being threatened to have ICE called on them if they did not pay the rent, if they weren't able to pay, which is also another issue. Tenant rights, understanding that that's not okay to happen, especially if there is a contract in hand. There's actually a bill that's going to be heard tomorrow at 8 a.m., which is AB 486. It's an eviction protection. It connects landlords and tenants with rental assistance when the eviction moratorium is lifted, which will happen in a few days. So that's a very big bill, very important to support, as well as the other bills that Assemblywoman Torres mentioned. Another bill that we definitely have been uplifting during the legislative session has been AB 213, which provides scholarships regardless of legal status, which are just the state and local scholarships. Of course, undocumented immigrants can't receive any federal scholarships or grants, so it's just important to put that out there as well. As a UNLV student, I have definitely noticed how expensive UNLV is. I mean, I definitely pay school out of pocket, and one summer class is costing me like around 1,400. So I'm very lucky to, be able to do that and go to school and work to pay for that. But I know that there's a lot of folks who are not able to do that. The other thing that I also wanted to mention, which Jocelyn will get more into details about, at MFA, we actually have a Daca fundraiser for first-time applicants. Ever since Daca got reinstated and folks can apply for the very first time. Like I mentioned before, as someone who has Daca, I have definitely seen how expensive it is. I mean, it's $495 regardless of renewal or first-time application. So we have been raising funds for first-time applicants, specifically high school students, the younger folks whose parents did not expect DACA to get reinstated, because not to be negative Nancy on this call, but I definitely did not think it was going to get reinstated, especially to its 2012 version in which new folks could apply. So that is something that I definitely wanted to uplift, and I'll put the link in the chat in case anybody's able to donate anything. Like, it definitely helps. One of the biggest things that we have seen in the DACA clinics is financial hardship has been the biggest reasons why folks have not applied for DACA. They have everything ready except the money, unfortunately, and this pandemic has not made it easier for our communities. So that is one big way to get involved with this, is supporting young immigrants.
Sorry, I was making notes so I could make sure to bring that up in our email. That would be we like to have actions people can take. So that's wonderful. So Jocelyn, we'll have you go next. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you again so much for having me. So I just want to piggyback what everyone said, especially Maria. So I am Mi Familia Vota's immigration organizer. So I've been working strictly with the community, making sure that they get out there and get the help they need. So as Maria mentioned, like DACA clinics have been like one of our biggest focus, especially starting the beginning of the year, because I was working with the Esperanza Fund at the end of last year. And as soon as they would receive their checks, I would do just a quick checkup call, make sure they were doing good. And many moms were saying like, DACA was reinstated. My child is now like, what do I do? And I reached out to Maria and I was like, this is a big need from our community. We have to do something. Because we were seeing a whole bunch of places helping out with renewals and like getting folks able to renew, but not that many folks helping with new applications. And it is because it is a very long process. We've learned that through our first round. It is something that does take a while because you do have to collect evidence and have to prove that you were here. So just for a quick rundown for anyone listening, letting them know if they qualify. In order to apply for DACA, you have to be at least 15 and a half years old, and you needed to have come here before the age of 16, before June 15, 2007. You also needed to be 31 years or younger before the age of June 15, 2012. So those dates get a little confusing. So, but yes, so those are the two big requirements. The main date is June 15, 2007. So here, like during this entire process, like we help them. We do an info session where we tell them, here are your requirements. This is the evidence you need to collect. So they get all the information they need. And then throughout the time, we get them prepped for the DACA clinic. So we have attorneys there and translators getting them ready to fill out the application. But during that 1 month that we give them, we do constant check-in calls, like, what documents are you missing? Do you have evidence for every year? Can you prove this? Just to make sure that they're fully ready, because it's super difficult. I'm also a DACA student, and I know when I first applied for DACA, my mom showed up to the attorney's office with a stack of evidence. And to this day, I don't know how she did it. And it's amazing to see that I'm able to now help these moms. And I'm like, okay, I appreciate my mom more than ever to see like how difficult this process is and for her to have done it herself. So it is very important that we help folks, especially new Daca folks get their applications. It's very exciting during the first round, getting to hear the thank yous of young high school students applying. So it's very amazing to see that there's going to be more Daca folks that are going to be able to go to college and work and like be able to get all these benefits that I have received for a while. Another thing that we've always done and are continuing to do is our citizenship workshops. So I am learning from Maria. She's passing the torch on to me, and she's helping me apply, learn how to help folks apply for citizenship. So it's actually really amazing process to see like folks come in and like we just help them fill out their applications, and we have fairs again with attorneys, letting them know like reviewing all their applications. And it's amazing to see the process of DACA as well as citizenship, and it's incredible to always work with the community. So that's what we've been doing, and it's really amazing to see. And thank you to anyone that can donate to our DACA fund, because students are very excited to be applying.
Thank you. I have lots of questions. Just kind of looking through some of my notes that I had before. You know, I know that we know that we're doing better here. Biden is reversing a lot of Trump's horrible, I hate even saying his name, the previous president's, all of his bills and laws. Can any of you tell us how is that going? How has it changed with the Biden administration now? I know some of the things I've just recently read, you know, the wall construction is stopping. He's reversed that. He's got an immigration bill that is really comprehensive that has to, get 10 votes in the Senate. I mean, there's a lot that he's changing. And is that helping in Nevada? How is that helping your activism and what's going on here? I didn't know who could speak to that.
I can at least start with some of the initial asks here. So as a caseworker, I reach out to the federal agencies, USCIS, all the agencies within DHS, Department of Homeland Security, and we follow up on active applications. Sometimes we try to assess and assist in a deportation case. The senator's office tries to advocate as much as possible. Like you said, during the Trump administration, a lot of delays in applications, a lot of issues with, like I said, delayed applications and sometimes denials that didn't were correct. And now during the Biden administration, it seems like a lot of these procedures are being rolled back, but it is taking time. I know that a lot of folks were hearing that DACA applications are delayed, whether it's a renewal or a first time. And that's my primary job here, is to make sure I check in with the service center. I believe usually it's the Nebraska Service Center that works on these cases. I follow up with them directly and have a liaison that I've worked with for now 5 years, for about 5 years now. And we check in with them to make sure that every application is looked at. We've had to reopen cases that were completely forgotten. And I know that that's something that we're going to continue working on at my level as a caseworker.
I can speak. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Jocelyn. No, Jocelyn, go ahead.
Thank you. So I just really like some things that were mentioned in the past is the new Biden administration has definitely brought a lot of hope to the immigrant community. But with that, it does, we do have to be very careful on what we are sharing. Just like for when the immigration bill was introduced, many folks believe that it was enacted, and that was not the case. So it's having to protect our community from notario fraud, which I believe someone brought up. I'm not sure who, but I'm sorry. But somebody did bring up notario fraud, which is a huge deal because there is a lot of miscommunication. And I know Natalia spoke about informing the community, but it's also very important that we are careful on what we inform. So it is we are having really big wins with DACA being initiated and all these bills being proposed, but we do know that nothing is enacted for an official immigration reform. So we have to make sure that we keep people's hopes high without them putting them in a dangerous situation of being scammed or submitting applications that they shouldn't submit. So it is a lot of hopeful situation, but we must continue to educate our community as well.
And, one of the things, like, as an educator, so when I'm not here in the Nevada State Legislature, I'm back home in Las Vegas, teaching in East Las Vegas, and working with the community in that realm. And, when I'm back in the classroom, I think, one of the things that apparent to me is just the changed relationship between my students in government and my students in politics, right? So with the election of current President Joe Biden, I was able to see families feeling more comfortable in government spaces in general, and that includes schools and our public education system, just coming forward and talking about maybe an issue or like trying to ask for information about where they can get help. And where they can, like how they can deal with maybe an immigration issue, or how they can make sure that their undocumented child gets access to healthcare, and like things like that. These questions that are very like standard, but help improve the quality of life for immigrants in our communities. So I'm very excited to see President Joe Biden's, the results of his election. But I think that, more than that, more than just like the policy that he implements, it's just this changed relationship between immigrants and our government systems. And I know that that's going to only continue, and that the relationship between government and the immigrants in our community is only going to strengthen over the next 3 years.
And when they look at the, how he's doing with his first 100 days, immigration actually was it was lower on the, people thinking he's doing a good job percentage. One of the things that we were talking about was separation of families and at the border. And Michelle's putting her hands in the air. What are you hearing about that? And is that improving? I know that a lot of people think he's not implementing some of these plans quick enough, and families are still affected.
I'll just be abundantly honest. I'll never think it's quick enough if we have families that are separated at the border, right? Like that's the reality. But the other reality of it is that I understand that these systems are very complex, and that the president can't change them immediately, right? So it will never be quick enough for me, and I think that's very true of a lot of the policy that we do here, even in the Nevada State Legislature, right? Like, the fact that, students go without access to healthcare, like that's a responsibility here on the state government that we don't fulfill quick enough to me. And so I don't want to point fingers and say it's their fault. But I'm happy with the steps forward that we're making here in the state legislature and or in the federal government. And I'm sure that Javier could speak more specifically to some of the things that are being done.
Of course. So as I mentioned before, the senator did visit the border in fall of 2019, and she was able to speak to agents. I think they were in Nogales, Arizona, and kind of just get a general understanding of what they're going through, and also speak to hundreds of families and what they were going through as well. Specifically the families and how like unaccompanied children coming here and being detained, and then trying to figure out where their family is in the U.S. Specifically here in Nevada, I haven't received as many because family members they go, when accompanied children come, they go across the country. But we did receive a case where we did get to, we'll work with the UNLV Law Clinic and track down a family, all the way in Texas, and, focus on making sure that they're being helped. Moving forward, I think that's the goal here, is to continue tracking down these families. And that's the tough part, because, a lot of immigrants do move around and make sure that sometimes they don't leave concrete addresses. And I know that's another issue that was happening. But, on my end, I'm helping as much as I can as a caseworker. And I know the senators, helping to push and speak to the Biden administration to help wherever they can, whether it's the federal funding or at the local level here, help myself or any of our other immigration caseworkers.
Thanks.
I would also like,
go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I was just going to say, I would also like to add that there's many times where family separation also happens within the border, within our own state. So it's very important to make sure that we're supporting legislation that helps immigrant families, but also protecting immigrant families as well, especially when it comes to polymigra, poly-ICE relationships, especially here. I mean, there's been a lot of families who have been directly impacted by police stops and I want to say, honestly, the most smallest things, like a broken tail light, not making a 3-second stop all the way. I'm not sure if that's me.
I think Marta's on twice. It might be. There we go.
But as I was saying, like just for the smallest jobs that later puts people in deportation proceedings and have a police record, have a record with law enforcement that does put these families at risk. I have been directly impacted by, and I know like multiple people who have been directly impacted by poly ICE. So that is one of the biggest things that I'd like to, uplift, is that family separation does happen within the state, and it's very important to support legislators and community activists, community organizers who are doing such a great job at making sure that those laws no longer, or hopefully no longer exist one day, but also put themselves uplifted as well.
And just to quickly chime in to build off of what Maria said, and so AB 376 does exactly that by requiring the AG to create the model policies regarding the relationship between local law enforcement agencies and our immigrant community. That's like one key thing. And then the other key thing that legislation does is the ensuring that immigrants are defended when they have these proceedings, ensuring that the immigration clinic that is doing amazing things on the ground to ensure that our unaccompanied minors have representation, because we know on this call that our kids shouldn't be representing themselves in immigration court, or that even a family member shouldn't be representing themselves at immigration court with something as complicated as a deportation on the line. We need to ensure that programs like that are funded, and so I'm excited that Mi Familia Vota, I know, has been a supporter of AB 376, and so I'm hoping that we can continue to build that relationship.
Thank you. And I know Michelle had a question.
Thank you, everyone. My head is going to explode. I learned so much today. I really appreciate all the information. Wow, you women are fabulous. I just can't even tell you how much that was so helpful. I have so many things to say, but I'll try to put them in order. Okay. I want to talk about legislation first, because Assemblywoman Torres, I just want to make sure that you and I connect sometime in the future, because we have foster children. I work for the Department of Family Services in the Child Fatality Unit, but also in the CSEC unit too, ARIS, sexually exploited children who are separated from their parents, some of them due to immigration or deportation or ICE. And I want to make sure, NRS 432B says that, kids, we have to find permanent homes for them if they're in foster care 15 out of 22 consecutive months. And sometimes it's because the parents have been deported and they can't get home to their parents. Sometimes parents don't want them to come with them. And that's the truth. They want them to stay here. And so, I feel like we could probably do something in legislation next session when it comes to maybe changing the law about the time limits for parents who have been deported for their children, for a reunification process for them. As far as the citizenship workshops, that would be wonderful if somebody could share that information, because we do have a lot of families, and we don't, we are not here to judge anybody's status or anything. We just want kids to be with their families. SEIU we were asked to go to the border to assess families to help children reunify with their parents about 2 weeks ago. We plan on doing that within the next 30 days. But if somebody could put in the chat or when the workshops are for our foster parents or our natural parents that want to get citizenship, when we close our cases, it's kind of like, okay, we're done, but there's so many other things that they need that we can't give them. So if we could have access to that, that would be wonderful. And then thank you, Maria. I think that's all I have right now. I have a couple more things, but I think I'll put them in the chat too if I have anything else. I know, Robin, did you have anything? Robin's on here too. We both work for Department of Family Services, but as we're talking, it's like, oh my gosh, our babies who are in foster care because of separation by their parents. Robin, did you have anything?
No, she's on mute, so. Well, then we have time, Michelle, if you wanted to, if there was a couple other things. It's up to you.
I was going to tell you about SB 386, Jerry, what you're talking about before is a right to return. That's from culinary. Yes. That is, like Assemblywoman Torres said, it's the right for workers to return back to their jobs after they've been laid off, as opposed to reclassifying and rehiring people to do the same job for lower pay. So that is what the right to return is. And they were outside of the legislative building last week, holding up their signs, and we were all being very supportive. And they just got out of Senate Finance, I believe, or Ways and Means last week. I think they're going to go in front of the Assembly this week. And what else was there? DACA fundraiser. Maria, if you could send that information as well for the DACA fundraiser.
Yes, I put it in the chat box, but I'll also send it to you via
Okay.
email.
Okay.
And kind of bouncing off of everything that we've been saying, I really do think that uplifting all the resources that Maria, Jocelyn, and Selena are sharing in the chat is like really, really beneficial. A lot of these times, these communities can't really ever be reached, through phone calls, through emails, through text. It is 100% going to have to be that interpersonal relationship. And even if that's through social or through texting friends, group chats, whatever it can be, I know that's like a number one thing that it's hard to do because it's hard to relationally organize, right? It's hard to tell your friends like, hey, do this, hey, do that. But even spreading the information that way can help us out significantly in making sure that information is out there from trusted individuals who will trust that that information is correct as well.
Natalia, do you know a place that when you said, making sure all the material is translated in Spanish, that is so important. It's beyond, from Spanish to Tagalog, I don't know how to say that, but yes, just so many different languages we have, but is there a place where you think would be most beneficial for materials to be translated? Because I'm going to tell you, at Department of Family Services, I've had a few things translated and the parents are like, I can't even read this. What is this? Yeah. So is there a more appropriate place that we could utilize?
So I think that, that's been one of the bigger, larger system issues, right? And I know that we actually have a piece of legislation carried by Senator Doñate that deals with that language access portion. I have to check where it's at. I believe it had a waiver because it had a fiscal note. So I have to check where that piece of legislation specifically is at. But I know that looking at that language access portion is a big part of the discussion. I also know that the Office of New Americans has been doing some work around that issue, but the reality is that the Office of New Americans is a rather small team, and so I think that this is where we say as the treasurer, I think he put out a notice that says that you can say how are we going to use our funds as a state when we get the ARP money, the American Rescue Plan money. I think that one way we use our American Rescue Plan money is through translation. And that documents are translated. We ensure that our communities have access to information. At the beginning of the COVID pandemic, I will tell you quite honestly that, there were documents from the highest offices here in our state government that we were getting that I was translating alongside my cousin from El Salvador, who is he was bored because he was quarantined as well. And so we were on a Google Doc, literally translating documents for the state, not just for Las Vegas, not just for a flyer, not just for an organization, but for the state. It was me and my cousin from El Salvador sitting at home translating documents. And so the reality is that, there's a lot of work that has to be done. So I think that, asking the questions, asking if this information is available in other languages is one of the ways that we start really getting that discussion. And, as allies for the immigrant communities and ensuring that, that's a question that we're asking, is this information available in Spanish? Unfortunately, in the education sector, sometimes that information isn't. And so I think it's really important that not just access to language access is not a Latino issue. Language access is not an Asian American issue. Language access is not an immigrant issue. Language access is an American issue, and it's something that we have to address. And as allies in this movement, I think that we all have the responsibility to address it.
And then real quickly, sorry,
go ahead.
Thank you. I want to speak on the citizenship. So we're actually going to be having an info session via Facebook Live on our Mi Familia Vota Facebook. It's going to be June 2nd at 5. So we're doing it on via Facebook Live. That way, no matter where you're at, you can tune in, and we'll just be going in specifics to see if you meet the requirements to apply for citizenship. So I just want to put that out there. We will be having a flyer go up this week on our social media to promote it as well. And we can also send a flyer via email to anybody that needs it.
Thank you. Somebody was talking about with the pandemic, one of the questions I had at the beginning of the pandemic, we worked with Mi Familia Vota on some of the, the food bank that they were working on, that you were working on. how is it going now? How is the word getting out? We know what 40% of people have had vaccines. How is that going? Getting people vaccinated and safe. I mean, here we are opening up pretty much 100%. And I'm vaccinated, so I'm feeling, a little cautious, but fairly safe, and going somewhere where people are watching a Golden Knights game and everybody's got their mask off. But if only 40% are vaccinated, how safe are we? How safe is our community? So I just wondered how that was going, and just some of the other things you were helping in the community, how some of those actions have been continuing, and maybe how they're going now. Maria?
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about that. We're actually going to be starting our GOT vaccine program. So it's going to be a very similar to Get Out the Vote, just knocking on the community's door, especially those in those districts where a lot of the folks, like, they have very low percentage of those that have been vaccinated. We were also part of a weekend of action with Está en Tus Manos, and we learned a lot of the reasons why the community was not getting vaccinated. We learned that, first of all, signing up online, there's that, once again, language barrier. There's also that technology barrier with the older folks. And there's just a lot of things in which the community needs more help and guidance in. So we're going to be there, of course, supporting them, making sure that we're registering them to get the vaccine. And we're going to take advantage of all the different things that we're doing. So, for example, the Daca clinics, like making sure that people who are going to the Daca clinics are also getting information on the vaccines. People who are going to our citizenship workshops are also getting information on the vaccines. Especially in immigrant communities, a lot of the place where a lot of folks have actually stopped has been where it asks you for your social security number. So letting the community know that you do not need to have a social security number in order to get the vaccine has been one of the biggest things. I know it was something that I definitely had to talk to my family about like, it's okay, like, you don't need to put it. Same when the COVID testing was happening, having that social security number question has definitely been frightening to our community, but ensuring that we, as someone who the community trusts, who the community sees us outside of supermarkets, registering them to vote, passing out information. I mean, we had a weekend with the Nevada Hispanic Caucus as well, passing out masks. And when this was happening back when the pandemic was just starting, so ensuring that we're still keeping those connections with the community, we're still handing that information out. And once again, like Natalia had mentioned, it's something that I want to keep uplifting, making sure that that information is out in Spanish, but not just any Spanish, in a Spanish that the community understands. I mean, there's times where my first language is Spanish, but there's times where I'm looking at words, I'm like, what does this mean? Like, I do not understand what this word means. So ensuring that that is also accessible language, even when it's just being translated. And we are going to, like I mentioned, we are going to be having canvassers go door to door, making sure that this information is being spread. Something that we also noticed is a lot of the issue was working families don't have time to wait in line for a vaccine. So ensuring that we also have connection with vaccine sites and telling them, like, hey, there's no wait here. Like, you do not have to wait to get the vaccine at this site. Like, you can just go in without an appointment right now. That is another one of our focuses, but also, like, once again, and I know I'm being repetitive right now, but just ensuring that the language is out there, and that comes in hosting Facebook Lives, hosting informational sessions that are in the languages that the community understands. And like Assemblywoman Torres said, not just in Spanish, because this doesn't just affect the Latino or the immigrant communities. Like, this does affect everyone. And like Jerry, like you were mentioning, if only 40% of our community is vaccinated, how safe can we feel when we're going out? And especially seeing folks without masks now has also been one of the biggest things.
I know a friend to Nevada now, and one of my best friends is Zoe Nicholson. She lives in Long Beach, and that was my first reaction was, okay, well, that's good. We can kind of get out now. And she's like, well, what about the people who are working 2-3 jobs and, that are, anxious about getting the vaccine or not able to get out and get it? And, are we just forgetting about those people? And she always thinks that way first. And it dawned on me that, that is true. So, anyway, I saw Natalia nodding away over there. I just didn't know if you had anything more to add to that, Natalia.
I really can't even say more, but I'm like resonating with Maria's message so much. Coming from a family that's undocumented as well, it's very difficult. It is a very real conversation. And my sisters all work for the casinos, you know, and it's a real conversation to say, hey, I know you need to get your vaccine. Like, hey, you do need to take time off work, you know, and as lenient as a workplace could be, at the end of the day, it's still a very much like communication struggle, language barrier struggle, you know, time struggle. There's a lot of people who the second they get off work, they're going to have to go pick up their kids, and they don't have the time to, you know, sit and think about waiting in line for 2 hours to get a vaccine, or in the same way a COVID test. And it was extremely difficult. And it's a very real truth that during the pandemic, and we're still in it now, we had a lot of, or at least a lot of my family who's even scared to get a COVID test, right? And because they're scared that if they come back, they can't afford to take time off work. And while they want to stay healthy, they want to, you know, be a part of it as well, they're very much so like, I can't take, you know, 2 weeks off. I can't take the time off because I won't get paid, because I don't have that employment security, because I don't have those union statutes aren't in place, right? And so that's where a lot of that comes in. And just hearing Maria touch on that, it really is the truth about the community. Is there's a lot of work to be done. And as I can say, like the very first baby step is really like battling this like disinformation, making sure there's translated materials, making sure it's presented in a way that's understood to the community. Because, you know, you tell them, hey, go get a vaccine from the US government, it's not going to be as easy as like, sure, I'll go do it. It's like, you're going to have to sit, you're going to have to explain, you're going to have to, you know, show them, yes, you can trust, like, yes, you can be a part of this. And it is like a very much, again, like I've said multiple times today, really that group effort in making sure it get done. And it's really the truth about where Nevada is right now. Nevada does need to get vaccines up. We need to build a little bit more trust in the community. We took their jobs away with no job security, and now we're asking them to do a lot. It's going to first have to be about building that trust and reinforcing that, you know, hey, if you do get this vaccine, we're here with you. Like we're a part of it. We can't keep betraying the community and also asking for things. So I really can't resonate more than what has been said today. It definitely has been tough on our community.
We have to think historically about the relationship between our communities and vaccines as well. I mean, communities of color have been the guinea pig for vaccines for, centuries, I think, really at this point, you know, who are we going to test to see if this vaccine works? Oh, let's try Latino women. And actually in Latin America, they really did that. They didn't tell the women what they were putting in their bodies. And then it made them incapable of having children, right? Yeah. As Michelle put in the chat, you look at the Tuskegee Airmen, and they did similar things to them as well. I mean, like, this is historic. Communities of color have often been targeted for this vaccine. So when we talk about like vaccinating communities of color, unfortunately, there's a lot of distrust between our communities and vaccinations. And that's why I think it's so important for us to help partner with organizations like Mi Familia Vota that have the relationships with the community. And I think even with, Senator Cortez Masta's office that has like the relationship with the community to kind of say like, no, this is something that we need. And then getting other Latinos in our community that are, and immigrants in our community to kind of be like the spokesperson for like, hey, we need this vaccine, right? And I know that ACDC has been, exactly that on the Asian American side, making sure that this information is available in multiple different Asian languages, or Pacific Islander languages, but then also ensuring that, we have like the right people that are messaging and connecting and uplifting those messages as much as we can. It doesn't matter necessarily that you're bilingual. It matters that you're out in those communities where individuals maybe are not getting vaccinated and helping spread that information. So as you're looking to help uplift the message of COVID vaccines, don't just target on the communities that you think already have access to this information. Try to target the communities that you think don't have access to this information.
Yes, and one other thing that I've seen, and I know that the Tantos Manos group was one piece of it, but also, the senator and our staff would connect with local leaders and kind of give them a 101 on immigrant families and undocumented families, and tell them like, it was really hard for them to get through the Social Security number to sign up for UMC's testing site. it still is really hard to see National Guard members. While I, for understanding immigrant families that don't always trust the military in their own countries, coming, to get tested and seeing a military member doesn't always feel welcoming. And, explaining that to some of our elected officials at the local level, and it's again, like, I want to make sure that the military folks are a friendly, welcoming capacity to a lot of immigrants that don't always feel trusting. We explain to them and explain to a lot of folks, even my own family, and have to tell them, like, hey, it's okay to go get tested. It's okay to get vaccinated. They're there to help. They're the National Guard for Nevada. They're, a lot of these folks are, every day there are there are neighbors, there are family members, and that I know that was one big piece of it, that is to continue speaking to local electeds, the schools at like UNLV and UNR and our northern and southern Nevada, and making sure that it's just a safe place for people to go to. And I know that was a big piece of it as well.
And I feel like everybody's so hyped up now talking about COVID vaccine access to our communities. And I just want to add, also an issue that we were seeing was folks weren't having rides to vaccine sites. So that is another thing that at Mi Familia Vota, we will be having, I don't want to say designated driver, but a designated driver to vaccine sites for folks who don't have the access to be able to drive themselves. So if anyone's free to volunteer for that as well, like, we will, like, let me know and we will reach out to you for that as well. Because sometimes, like, the community just needs someone to be there with them. And like me, as someone who grew up knowing that I was undocumented, or I am undocumented, seeing people in uniforms is scary. And I'm going to be real honest. It is real scary. I was raised like, hey, don't tell anyone in a uniform what your legal status is. So that fear is most of the time, I'm not going to say sometimes, most of the time still lingers with me as someone who is involved in the movement. So I know sometimes people in our community, they just want to be heard. They just want to be, walked with. They want to know that someone's going to be there to protect them, but also to give them the information that is correct and that's not going to harm them. So that was something else that I also wanted to uplift as well.
Thank you. And that is, I'm just so amazed. That's something I didn't even think about. And I'm showing my white privilege, because I was so happy to get my vaccine. That it isn't something I thought about when I saw the National Guard. And that thank you for bringing that up. That is so true. And then the other piece I was thinking as you were talking is, I was the second shot. I really was pretty sick the second shot for 3 days. And, people, I'm sure they're hearing that from others and thinking, I don't have time to take a day off from work and not feel well after taking my vaccine when we have no, paid, time off. It's difficult. So those are things I think we need to think about when we're discussing and getting people to be safe and get the vaccine. But thanks, Javier and Maria. That was really important. So if anybody else have any other questions, I was kind of watching the chat, and if I don't see any, oh yes, Connie, I see your hand up. No, you had your hand up. I wasn't sure. So maybe we could just kind of wrap up the program if you have something to kind of wrap it up with from your organization, and also we want to make sure we have the links in the maybe things you can tell us for. People can do for actions or ways to get a hold of you. I know at Assembly Women Torres, maybe there's a link that maybe you could give us if someone has any questions. So if Maria, do you want to start with maybe just something to wrap up with what Mi Familia Vota, just to wrap up the program. So
a little call to action.
There you go.
So definitely, if anyone has any questions, I was about to say comments or concerns, because that's what I feel like I'm just programmed to say now. I will put my email and cell phone number in there, so anyone, please feel free to reach out to me. If anyone has any free time to just volunteer, that would also be amazing. Like I said, definitely just making sure that we're getting the word out to the community. And actually, and I think, oh, Robin's still here. Robin actually volunteered for our Weekend of Action, so I also want to uplift that because she was an amazing volunteer with us when we were getting out information to folks for COVID-19 the first week. So that was definitely very exciting to see folks there. But yeah, I mean, definitely like and I'll let Jocelyn repeat the dates for citizenship, but just if y'all want to come in and tune in to our information so y'all can learn a little bit more about like Daca and citizenship, that would be amazing. I know that there's sometimes people who have questions, and of course, we're not attorneys, so we can't answer any legal questions. I do always like to put a disclaimer on that. But yeah, we will send over all the information over to Michelle and make sure that information is spread out to y'all. But yeah, that's all I would like to say. So thank you so much, and thank you for inviting us to be part of this amazing program.
And please keep it continuing, sending us information that we can get out. As Natalia said, we'd like to help, spread that information on our website and on our social media. So, Jocelyn?
Definitely, just me and Maria are in the same boat. So thank y'all again for having us, and we will be sharing that information as much. Since I'm on my iPad, I will ask Maria to type in my phone number and my email. If anyone knows anyone that needs help with a DACA application, any sort of citizenship, please feel free to reach out to me. I will either get you in contact with an attorney and see if we can help you ourselves. Just as a last reminder, our info session for citizenship is on our Facebook Live June 2nd at 5 p.m. And we're currently trying to set up a date for our next DACA clinic. We are aiming for mid-July. So the date we're looking at is July 10th, but we haven't made it official yet. So anybody that would like to apply for DACA for the first time and needs that help, definitely reach out to us. And thank y'all again for providing this platform.
Thank you. Assemblywoman, do you have any last words for us? Ways we can help with the legislation you're working on too?
Yeah, so, on behalf of the Nevada Hispanic Legislative Caucus, I just want to, reiterate how important it is that we get this vaccination information out. As session is wrapping up over the next couple of days, I think that the remaining key bills that we have is, Maria, can you tell me the number for the DACA bill that's Solomon Flores' I know that you know it.
AB 213.
Thank you. Sorry, all these numbers kind of meshed together. AB 213, getting that one voted out of Ways and Means and then moved on to the Senate, and then out of Senate Education is going to be super important. Getting AB 376 out, which will be the first time that our state legislature has appropriated any type of finances to the UNLV Immigration Clinic is going to be super important. But, quite honestly, as session wraps up, really my goal is making sure that our community has access to information. And I think I speak on behalf of the majority of my colleagues too. Like, our community has been hit hard by COVID-19. We see that economically, but then we also see that by the health of our communities. The reality is that COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted communities of color. And one way that we can prevent that impact and we can stop that impact is ensuring that we have access to information about vaccine. And Mi Familia Vota and Está en Tus Manos campaign is doing phenomenal work on the ground to ensure that, vaccination sites are opening in the next couple of weeks. I know that we're having greater conversations about opening a vaccination center, at La Bonitas across the district, which are Latin American markets in our communities. Literally, one is 2 blocks away from my house. And I'm super excited about that because I know my neighbors haven't gotten vaccinated yet because they've reached out to me. And so I think having, being voices, being allies in this movement is more than just having this conversation today. It means remembering this conversation and bringing it to the table when we talk about, where are vaccination clinics? Are there vaccination clinics in communities that are, largely communities of color? Is there information translated, and how do we get that information out there? And how do we partner with organizations like Mi Familia Vota to ensure that that information is out there? And finding ways to be involved. And it doesn't mean you have to be bilingual. It doesn't mean that you have to be an immigrant yourself. It doesn't mean that you have to be Latino, Latina. It means that your heart is within our community. And I think that means spreading this information, making sure it's available. And I don't know that it historically has been. And I think that we're getting better. As a state, I truly believe that we're getting better about it. And so I hope that we can count on now to be a part of that change, right? And be a part of that movement and saying, like, it's not good enough what we have right now. What will be better is if we can kind of move with the times.
Thank you. And Natalia, do you want to follow up with that?
Yeah, one, I want to say first, like, and foremost, thank you so much for holding this space and having this conversation. It definitely, I'm probably sure you heard us all venting a little bit, but it feels really good to be able to talk about it with people who are interested in learning about the issue, learning what are the roots of the issue, and then again, learning what the best solutions are. So first and foremost, thank you, and thank you, Michelle, for reaching out to us to have us jump on. And then second, I think just really like backing off of what everybody said, a little bit touching to a little bit about what I said earlier too. It's going to be a group effort. And if you have someone ever approach you and asking information about the vaccine, be kind, be gentle, be sweet. Everyone is like at a very different stage with how much they have gone through to get to this point. And we all know that, you know, to kind of get back to normal, we're going to need to really come together to get this done, making sure we're battling that disinformation, making sure our neighbors feel comfortable, feel welcomed, are open in these conversations. And like Assemblywoman Torres said, not just having this be a call that we're talking about it, but practicing it in live in our everyday life. You know, if we see someone who needs help, making sure we extend that hand, because while we can't save the whole world, we can definitely save the 3 to 4 people around us. And I think that really just brings us all home and pushes us forward together. So thank you again.
Thank you. And Javier, I wanted to leave let you speak last so you can tell us, you know, how we can get involved with what the senator is doing. And we thank you for taking the time to come and speak to us about.
Thank you all. And I'm definitely honored to be in a Zoom virtual session with a bunch of women that I definitely, you know, want to support and uplift as much as possible. You know, on my end, you know, the first thing the senator said day one was we're going to provide constituent services, and, you know, please feel free to call. I left the phone number on there, you know, the email as well. And also feel free, whether it's a legislation or whether it's a casework issue, to voice, to call, or to have your friend or whoever it is that needs assistance to give us a call. I'm not an attorney, but I can definitely interpret what's going on with the situation. And if it feels like it's something that's doesn't seem right, or the application wasn't submitted correctly, or if the case is not going in the right direction, I'm more than welcome to push into you know, to an attorney that we trust, or an agency that we trust. And the same goes for any other federal requests that, you know, whether it be with IRS, Social Security, sometimes as well, we try to help with the housing. I know that's something that is a state issue, but, you know, we try to be as helpful as possible in every space that we can. And if we can't help directly, you know, we forward it along to the appropriate agency or the appropriate place where we would work on. And again, thank you all for having me here. Again, my name is Javier, and however I can assist, please let me know.
Thank you, and thank the senator for all the hard work and how we can help. We love working with her. So, and Michelle, do you have any last minute words? You've helped put together this wonderful program, and
thank you. Those are my last words. Like, I really thank all of you for coming. It's been an amazing hour and a half. I've learned so much. Javier, thank Senator Cortez Masto. I saw her when we were with Dr. Biden a few weeks ago. I was with all of them, and then for coming to SEIU too as well last week. So we appreciate her and support her 100%. And thank you, everyone. Assemblywoman Torres, thank you so much. I love seeing you in office, and I watch you on my 2 TVs that I have going over here, and I'm like, yes, girl, tell them, say all that. So we really appreciate you advocating for a community, for Nevada, and for District 3. And then my sisters, Maria and Natalia, thank you. It's been a pleasure to really listen and get to know what you stand for firmly and stand for, right? And so I heard an awesome quote the other day when I was watching a movie. It's not a movement unless people are moving. If they're not, it's a support group. and you guys are definitely in a movement. And so I really appreciate your action and letting us know how we can help you all the way. And Jocelyn, it was nice to get to know you too. And thank you so much for coming. I know it's always last minute, but I appreciate all of you and how you are allowing us to help the community through you. So thank you.
And thanks so much. Nevada now thanks you. We've learned so much, and you've given us a lot of homework to learn more. And we promise to be a good ally and to work with all of you. And I really look forward to doing more with Mi Familia Vota. They've just been a wonderful, wonderful partner group. So. And thanks for taking time on your Sunday. I know the Assemblywoman has had a very busy few months here. So, and we look, our next program is going to be, I forgot to say that part. I think we probably put it in the chat, but we're going to be talking about with the merge, right, Michelle? And that's I had it on my notes somewhere.
13th.
That's 13th. And we'll be talking to with the Emerge program and learning more about that. And I know several of people on the program are with Emerge, been in Emerge, going through Emerge. So thank you for taking the time. Have a good afternoon, evening, and we will see you next time.